Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Gold Table Talk with Century 21 South Africa. Today, I am joined by the brilliant Professor Gregory Lee of Wits University, and we are going to be talking a bit about some research that was done just recently on AI and chatbot adoption within the real estate industry in South Africa. So, welcome, Prof. How
Thank
are
you
you
so much.
doing?
We are most well.
Happy to be here.
Absolutely happy to be here with Century 21. Thank you.
So tell us a bit about your experience when it comes to AI and chatbots, just like a general idea of what it actually is.
Well, let's start with a chatbot. A chatbot essentially is a two-part piece of digital technology, and it is very simple. I think all of us have interacted with them by now. We're talking about a piece of technology that's designed to automatically resolve a query, fetch an answer, that sort of thing. If we break it down, a chatbot really is a two-part piece of technology. It's number one, got to understand what the person is asking for. And we'll talk about this, I think, a bit later. Most of the attention has gone to that. Just understanding what does the person want. The customer, the buyer in your guys' cases, the agent, whatever it might be. The second part of the technology is actually the part that's the most problematic and also the part that I think is the most missing. So I think we'll build on this later, but that's the job of the agent, the chatbot, to go and fetch the answer, to find the right answer, to compose it back to the person doing the query. So it really is that simple. It's a two-piece, piece of software technology, but the devil's always in the details, isn't it? So where does AI come in? Where have I had some experience? Obviously, having designed some of these things, using a lot of AI over the last many years, we all are, and putting this all together to try to make chatbots better. There's been I would say for all industries, not just real estate, a very long, slow, and quite rocky beginning in this area.
And let's talk about that because real estate is known to be a very traditional industry,
Sure.
supposedly, and it's people facing. And I've had this discussion with people in the industry of where they're very opposed to technology because it's scary. And it is scary in the general sense. So I can understand that. What, from your expertise within tech and AI and chatbots, would you say is some of the barriers that has been within the real estate industry when it comes to adoption?
Well, certainly, I think there is a certain lack of understanding of where the applications could actually happen. Real estate has always been a profoundly people-centered, as we know, relationship-centered, personal communication-based industry. And I think to actually see some of the areas where chatbots could help without necessarily having to disrupt those traditional relationships, without having to destroy them, I think has been the biggest challenge. I certainly think cost is a perceived challenge, and I think we do need to get back to that because chatbots, especially in the modern era, do not have to be hilariously expensive. They really can be developed relatively cheaply if one knows what we're doing and also we're working with the right partners. And I think there's a lot of partners that will build very expensive solutions and not always very, very good solutions. It is possible to do it at scale at decent cost, but it is perceived to be a cost. One of the biggest barriers, I think, in all industries is the sheer amount of effort and time that goes into it. And that's because you can't just give the job to a tech provider. You can't say to a vendor, build me a chatbot. This has been the problem all the time throughout the years.
Why not, though?
Because they're only good at the first part.
Okay. Which
is understanding what the customer wants.
Right.
So traditionally, they've focused on that. And yes, they've tried to throw, let's say, some AI behind it. So traditionally, if we think about the way chatbots, we've all experienced this through our interactions with everything from, Checker 6060 to whatever chatbot out there, Vodacom, etc. But obviously we go on a scale. We go on a scale from the person clicking some boxes to sort of, to indicate which option it is that they want to speak into.
Mm.
Then we might graduate upwards to the person actually typing something into a box, freestyle, maybe a combination of these. And then, of course, there's voice activated chatbots, which are probably the hardest, although in the modern era it's not too difficult. But a lot of the attention was on those, especially on decoding the natural text or the audio, and we were using AI for that. Now it's still rocky, but a lot of that's been resolved. But that's not as I said, that's not the big job.
Yeah.
The big job for the chatbot is to understand what the answer should be.
Mm.
And as I always like to say to my clients and classes that we have at Wits, the really difficult job is to curate a rich knowledge base within the company that's at the chatbot's fingertips and that can be accessed by the bot accurately. So it has to have great metadata, but more importantly, great content. And if you don't have that, then the chatbot itself is just an empty husk. And that actually has been the problem with most companies, is they've got the vendors in and they've sort of said, go build us a chatbot. So they did. But they didn't do the hard work of getting, let's say, in Century 21, all the the franchises or the brokers or agents and so on and so forth to put together the rich knowledge base that the chatbots could actually access. Now that is a lot of work. It's years of work. Some organizations have done it better than others because they had a head start with things like rich CRMs, but to be honest, very, very few.
Sure. So on that, I mean, because you have to build this chatbot to have your tone, the way the company speaks, correct? Does it not need to pick up all those keywords, like you're saying? The company or the organization has to build all of that data for the chatbot to use.
Well, certainly, what I'm more saying is that you need to build, for example, a huge document library of answers. And for me, within a real estate setting, there's really two types of chatbots. There'll be the one that is used externally for buyers, and there will be the one that's used internally for the company itself. Let's say for agents to receive rich information, maybe really streamline the agent's work in doing things like valuing properties and putting together the reports, that kind of stuff. And I know a lot of work has gone behind that digitally, but getting that rich database behind any given request by, let's say it's a buyer in a buyer chatbot setting, all of those sort of answers, any possible answer to any possible question needs to be written up. Now, you can use generative AI to a certain extent to generate those answers in real time. But to be honest, it's a very, very starter field. It's a nascent field. And it's probably too dangerous for a company like Century 21 that has very specific processes and whatnot. For example, I mean, we certainly can't ask a generative AI, which is an AI that's job is to just generate answers, right? So many of you will have used ChatGPT. We can't ask it to generate the exact breakdown of let's say commission structures and legal fees and stuff. I mean, it would be too dangerous that it would get it wrong, and then you're almost locked into a tacit agreement with the customer. So right now, really, what companies need to do is have their own answers, perhaps helped at the beginning with some of that generative AI, put together that great knowledge base, and then yes, to your question, connected to the person who's on the chatbot. So by tone, I presume you were meaning audio, right?
Well,
Like
tone by actually like the branding of the company.
Sorry.
So
No, I misunderstood.
no. So from a marketing point of view, it's very important for us to have our own way of speaking and talking and branding and yes. So moving away from tech. But what's interesting to me is that we picked on the internal use of chatbots and the external use of chatbots. So what has been your experience with regards to the client-facing part of chatbots? I mean, this is always the interesting, controversial part of digital, I think, because is it user-friendly? Are people willing to use it? And within an industry like real estate, where property is one of the biggest investments a person will ever make in their life. Do
Mm.
they really want to work with a chatbot?
So let's have a look at let's answer that by having a look at some of the advantages. And let's also make the assumption that it's not either or. We don't have to have a chatbot or a real estate agent. We can have both. Certainly, to start off with, I certainly don't see chatbots replacing agents. I think buyers don't want that on average. I do know that there are some agencies that tried to go that route
Yes,
and
they
didn't do
have been.
particularly well. Some of the lower priced ones, etc. But what I will say is that there are advantages to chatbots that I don't think agents can match. So, for example, the communication with agents typically has quite a long lag, right? So, a buyer, especially anxious buyers, and we all know that there's a lot of anxious buyers out there, or let's say sellers as well. They want to feel like their queries are being heard in real time, are being attended to. So a chatbot can really help with that because, of course, a chatbot really can instantaneously relatively instantaneously bring you back an answer. And it might be an incomplete answer. And it might be that, right there, now that we've shown you this generic piece of documentation, the agent will be in touch with you very shortly. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, the anxious person can, or the person in a hurry, the emigrating person can get a feeling that the company has heard them. Yes, sorry, I totally misunderstood the tone thing. Yes, of course, we can, because remember as well, we can hard code that into the answers. The answers are not written by AI unless that's the way you set it up. The answers, in fact, more commonly are written by you. So you would dictate the tone. But that sense of that instantaneous feedback, I think, is very helpful. That sense of being able to very quickly muster quite a lot of information. Obviously, an agent can and will do that, or a franchise or whatever it is you're dealing with. But I do think that the ability of a bot to sort of say, well, here's all the relevant documentation in one very quick go. It also takes. Let's not forget on the internal side how much work it then takes off the side of people who really can then go and sell more effectively. That sort of mundane grunt work. We do hope and believe that increasingly digital will take care of that grunt work.
No, absolutely. And I think that's a major benefit of
Yeah.
AI and chatbot adoption. But with that comes obviously the cultural change within an
Yes.
organization.
Yes.
And within real estate, we know that, there's people that differ with regards to age range, for example. That was found in the research. And what was interesting to me was it's not only the older folk within the industry that are opposed to tech, but also the younger people coming in. And what would you say are some of the solutions that businesses in real estate can look at to kind of shift mindsets towards understanding the benefits of
So certainly, I think firstly, let's be clear that I think every organization should try to figure out what its objectives are going to be. It needs to be clear. Is the objective to replace roles, or is its objective to augment roles? Is its objective an efficiency side, a sales side? We try and understand, and realizing as well there'll probably be more than one chatbot for each of these different objectives. Maybe typically two, but it can be more than two. And I say two because, of course, the customer slash client slash buyer seller side, and of course the internal side. What I really feel is helpful from someone who's trying to enact culture change, firstly, is to pick low hanging fruit that really solves pain points for the user. And you don't have to solve everything. You don't have to have a fully functional chatbot. Really, I mean, you can start. Let's say it is with rolling out to franchises, and you're rolling out something that helps the agents. It can just be, for example, a chatbot that really pulls up really accurate, great, reports on a property that makes some of the grunt work behind some of that valuation research effortless, which I think probably is already being done digitally. I realize that, but this is just an example. Roll out that with just that one feature, and typically what will happen is people will be hooked by that high pain point solving feature. And typically, in my experience, what they'll then do is, how can we get more of this? So it's really identifying those high pain points and very specifically ones that are not going to threaten jobs. So we're looking at specific task or process based functionalities that can be solved for. That's number one. That's for me the biggest thing to shift perceptions. I do just want to mention, generationally speaking, that I think it's partly true that there's a generational difference. I mean, you did mention though that it's across the generations that people are slightly resistant, and I think that has more to do with fear of what it might do for jobs than it has to do with the use of the technology. I mean, for heaven's sake, my grandparents use more social media than I do, so so I think generations have certainly learned how to use digital. I do think that it's more a case of selling them on why they should use it.
And why should they use it?
I really do believe that designed properly, these things can take, as I said, an enormous amount of the mundane work, the work that sucks up our time where it could be done better by digital or more easily. Initial touch points with customer, before the customer's met the agent, for example, the client, that initial touch point of presenting, the agency in general to the buyer or the seller, giving them a sense, introducing them to the agent's profile, because of course there will be area agents, area franchises, hooking them up. All of this is done seamlessly, hopefully through a chatbot. There's no reason why an agent would feel threatened about that. But it takes some of the initial grunt work out of this sort of stuff, and the printing and all of that sort of stuff. As I said, much of the more mundane research, paperwork type stuff, I do believe the back and forth communications. Yes, a lot of us have done this efficiently digitally already through other systems. But I do see a lot of the post-sale work, the conveyancing, that sort of stuff being very nicely handled through this sort of stuff, queries back and forth through this. So in essence, it's not necessarily crucial then that there's a daisy chain of communications if someone wants to query something, let's say it's in the conveyancing side or whatever it is. So I think all of those mundane pieces that suck up what we really want to be doing. We really want to be selling, buying, we want to be making money. And that is where we are. Almost all of us don't live for paperwork. And I think these things can help.
100%. And that is all from our end. I think we've done quite a bit on chatbots and AI adoption, and it's been really interesting doing the research and working with you on this, because it's been very fascinating. And I must thank you for the guidance on everything you've done for assisting us in this, because I think it is going to be very helpful to the industry overall.
Yes.
Is there anything you want to add for real estate businesses to understand how they can implement this, just as an ending note?
Well, I think firstly, everyone out there should read the definitive work by Thireshni on this in the industry, which was conducted over the last year through Wits. And I hope that that's been made available somehow, it may be in a reduced format. I think that trying to just understanding that it is very possible to get out there and do these things. I think understanding that building a chatbot, especially internally, can, just as an example, I always like to say, all organizations, modern organizations, have 365, Microsoft 365. Microsoft 365, with a little bit of addition, has got chatbots, it's got all the AI with OpenAI, it's got everything you actually need, and you're hardly paying anything more. And it's very, very user-friendly. So I think the idea that it needs to be a massively costly, massively difficult thing to put together, especially for internal chatbots, is actually it's a false notion. but certainly also sp- spending a very serious amount of time on looking for the right external partners in digital. And not necessarily always jumping for the most expensive or the most resource draining ones, because I think there's a lot of great agencies out there that are quite small but will do great work for companies like Century 21.
Perfect. Thank you. That is Professor Gregory Lee, who is an expert in the digital field, and I am so honored to be joined by
Thank
you
you.
today. Thank you so much for
Thank you
your
for the
time.
invitation.
And hybrid models for chatbots within real estate industries. I think that's the way to go. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.